I'd like to have an argument, please.
Certainly, sir. Have you been here before?
No, this is my first time.
I see. Do you want to have the full argument, or were you thinking of taking a course?
Well, what would be the cost?
Well, yes, it's £1 for a 5-minute argument, but only £8 for a course of 10.
Well, I think it's probably best if I start with the one and see how it goes from there, okay?
Fine. I'll see who's free at the moment. Mr. Dubake is free, but he's a little bit conciliatory. Yes, sir. Try Mr. Barnard, room 12.
Thank you.
What do you want?
Well, I was told outside.
Don't give me that, you snotty-faced heap of parrot droppings! What? Shut your festering gob, you tit! Your type makes me puke! You vacuous, toffee-nosed, malodorous pervert!
Look! I came in here for an argument!
Oh, I'm sorry, this is abuse.
Oh. I see. Well, that explains it.
Yes. Oh, no, you want 12A next door.
I see.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Not at all. No, that's all right. Stupid git. Come in.
Is this the right room for an argument?
I've told you once.
No, you haven't.
Yes, I have.
When?
Just now.
No, you didn't.
Yes, I did.
Didn't. You didn't.
I'm telling you I did.
You did not.
Oh, I'm sorry, is this a 5-minute argument or the full half hour?
Oh, just the 5-minute one.
Fine. Thank you. Anyway, I did.
You most certainly did not.
Now, let's get one thing quite clear. I most definitely told you.
You did not.
Yes, I did.
You did not.
Yes, I did.
Didn't.
Yes, I did.
Didn't.
Yes, I did.
No, this isn't an argument.
Yes, it is.
No, it isn't. It's just contradiction.
No, it isn't.
Yes, it is.
It is not.
It is. You just contradicted me.
No, I didn't.
Oh, you did.
No.
You did just then.
No, nonsense.
Oh, look, this is futile.
No, it isn't.
I came here for a good argument.
No, you didn't. You came here for an argument.
Well, an argument's not the same as contradiction.
Can be.
No, it can't. An argument's a connected series of statements to establish a definite proposition.
No, it isn't.
Yes, it is. It isn't just contradiction.
Look, if I argue with you, I must take up a contrary position.
But it isn't just saying no, it isn't.
Yes, it is.
No, it isn't. Argument's an intellectual process. Contradiction is just the automatic gainsaying of anything the other person says.
No, it isn't.
Yes, it is.
Not at all.
No, look.
Thank you. Morning. Thank you.
What?
That's it. Morning.
Morning.
But I was just getting interested.
Sorry, the 5 minutes is up.
That was never 5 minutes just now.
I'm afraid it was.
No, it wasn't.
Sorry, I'm not allowed to argue anymore.
What?
If you want me to go on arguing, you'll have to pay for another 5 minutes.
But that was never 5 minutes just now. Oh, come on. This is ridiculous.
I'm very sorry, but I told you I'm not allowed to argue unless you pay.
Oh, all right. There you are.
Thank you.
Well,
Well, what?
that was never 5 minutes just
I
now.
told you I'm not allowed to argue unless you pay.
I just paid.
No, you didn't.
I did. I did. Look, I don't want to argue about that.
Well, I'm very sorry, but you didn't pay.
Aha! Well, if I didn't pay, why are you arguing? Gotcha.
No, you haven't.
Is that? If you're arguing, I must have paid.
Not necessarily. I could be arguing in my spare time.
I've had enough of this.
No, you haven't.
Oh, shut up. I want to complain.
You want to complain? Look at these shoes. I've only had them 3 weeks and everything all right through.
No, I want to complain about the man.
Complain, nothing happens. You might just as well not bother, and my back hurts. And whenever you had a fun day, look at
I want to complain. Ow!
Hold your head like this and then go wah. Try it again.
Whoa!
Better, but wah, wah. Hold your hands here.
No.
Now.
Ah!
That's it. Good.
Stop hitting me!
What?
Stop hitting me!
Stop hitting you.
Yes.
Well, what did you come in here for?
I came here to complain.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's next door. It's being hit on the head lessons in here.
What a stupid concept.
Right, hold it down.
What?
I have come here to chew bubble gum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubble.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, I say to you, to the sides of your head, to your ossicles, verily, welcome to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon. It is Tuesday. It is June 27th. It is the year of our Lord 2017. So, with that known, you can belly up to the bar. We've kept your seat, and it's great to see you back. Tonight, Fluffy is going to be a bartender. He pours with the best of them, and to my left, your right, you can clearly see if you're watching YouTube, and you can, if you wish to watch this live, you can go to YouTube, go to the SHR Media YouTube channel. We have our own channel, and you can watch this live, or you're listening via Spreaker, or perhaps you're on shrmedia.com. In any event, you're listening. We got you for that. You know what? I don't think we water our drinks, just like we don't water our conversation. We can talk about politics, religion, crime, culture, economics, race, sex, science, law. We talk about it all here at the Saloon. Nothing is sacred. The speech is free, but the booze is not. All we ask, it's very simple. One little thing. Flush the damn toilet. And because we still haven't fixed it, jiggle the damn handle. Don't forget to tip your waitress. Tonight, in the Saloon, we have the White Mamba. He is Tobes, the official attorney of the Berserk Bobcat Saloon. White Mamba, one each, Esquire, is going to be in here, coming at the bottom of the hour to talk to us about all sorts of things legal, because this week has essentially exploded in terms of all sorts of SCOTUS rulings, things that went for us, things that didn't quite necessarily go for us, but a lot of big, serious things, some very serious events did occur. And I would submit that the most important of them did occur. And there are some very important things that we're going to talk about to White Mamba. I was just called up about 3 hours before the show. And it was one of my friends, a guy that used to work for me in the department, and he retired just a little bit before I did. And he came back as what is called a retired annuitant. In other words, you can work for a limited period of time, a limited number of hours, and he decided that he was going to go back into the jails and work there for a while at what we call the branch. Well, after that, it's about a year and a half, I think, for him now. After a year and a half of going back after having been retired, he said, you know what? Screw it. I'm done. I'm done. D-U-N, done. And because of that, this is obscene. It makes me wonder, why the hell am I still in Fornicalia, behind enemy lines, in occupied Fornicalia, 3 miles, essentially, 2.5 miles from the belly of the beast, the Bill Mill in Sacramento, Fornicalia. Here's what he did. His wife is... she's retired, but she can pretty much go anywhere with the types of job skills that she had. Now, picture this. For those of you who have a think anything about Fornicalia, you know what a piece of crap state this is. Now, let me back up by saying that it's a beautiful state. To look at it, it's absolutely gorgeous. The coasts are gorgeous. The mountain ranges are absolutely fabulous. I live up at the 4,000-foot level, up Interstate 80, not far from a place called Blue Canyon, which gets all sorts of snow. I'm not quite in that level, but where I am is absolutely gorgeous. It's not the landscape that's terrible, that people can't deal with in Fornicalia. It's the damn leftists. It's the people. Well, obviously, he lives in Fornicalia as well. After coming back, after having been retired, he decided that he was going to do what I want to do, what I have wanted to do for quite some time. Is he went out with his wife, and they went all over the United States, but mostly around Idaho, South Dakota, North Dakota, Montana, Wyoming, like that. The bastard just bought a house just outside of Kalispell, Montana. Feature this. It's 3,400 square feet. I went on Zillow to go look at it. It looks like a mansion that you would see in Montana. He has an acre and a half. He's on the side of a hill. It's absolutely beautiful. Vaulted ceilings. Furniture that the owners are going to leave there because, as far as they're concerned, it's too much of a pain in the butt to move the furniture. $380,000. Now in Fornicalia, $380,000, if you're lucky, would get you about a 1,200 square foot house in the middle of Ghetto Central, where you hear boom, boom, boom all night long. The helicopters are flying over like crazy, and you hear gunshots in the middle of the night, and you hear lots of sirens, and you can even, if you have the windows open, you can even count the cop cars that are in pursuit. Oh, hey, there's one. Oh, there's the suspect car. You can hear the tires screeching. Then you hear the follow-up siren of there's one cop car. Oh, there's two cop cars. Oh, yeah, I hear a third. There's three cop cars. He's leaving that crap. That's what I listen to every night at my wife's house in Ghetto Central. So this bastard who worked for me decided that he's going to leave California. He's going to this gorgeous house. I looked it up. I looked at the outside. I looked at the inside. It's absolutely gorgeous. So literally, like the Frank Zappa song, he's moving to Montana. He's moving to Montana soon. Gonna be a dental floss tycoon. That's just for you Frank Zappa aficionados, of which the likes probably not going to be too many of you in here. Like I said, we're going to have White Mamba in here at the bottom of the hour. Let's take a peek at chat. Ooh, we have a fair number of people in chat already. We have Mary Brockman, and she's sitting at her chair in the saloon. She can tell. They kept it open for her because it says Mary Brockman on the back of the chair. That's how you can tell, because she's a very kind individual. So Mary Brockman's in chat. Bigfoot is in chat. We have Mike in chat. We have Dave Milner, the unpleasant blind guy who isn't. And again, it's not like I'm saying he's not blind. I'm just saying he is not unpleasant. He's actually quite pleasant. But again, as I customarily say, don't tell him I told him that, or I said that about him. It doesn't go real well. This particular week, it's as if just like regular, just like normal. Did anything happen this week? Well, I submit that basically everything happened this week. Now, some of these things I'm going to hold off because I want to discuss them with White Mamba, one each, the official attorney of the Berserk Bobcat Saloon. But some other rather embarrassing stuff occurred, and it occurred on behalf of my favorite people that we enjoy making fun of, poking, prodding, etc., because they are self-destructing before our eyes. And in terms of Schadenfreude, which is a perfect German word for me, look it up. You'll see what it is. When I saw all of this buttery goodness going on, my sense of Schadenfreude shot up to a 9 or a 10 because I thought it was absolutely wonderful. CNN is self-destructing before our very eyes. Here's an article. It says, CNN, Russia story debacle came at the worst possible time for the network. And you imagine my chagrin to hear that. I clutched my, I moved the fainting couch close so that if I swooned and fell, at least I'd have something to fall onto. This is grand. This is absolutely grand. And then that was just a little bit earlier from an incident that occurred over the weekend. And then Project Veritas, James O'Keefe, said yesterday that something today was going to be occurring. And it's absolutely glorious, so we're going to go over that too. Lex Harris, CNN's investigative editor, traveled to a journalism conference in Phoenix last week. In hindsight, his timing was terrible. While Harris was away, his group published a story on CNN.com that reported citing a single anonymous source, which is the standard game played these days by what I term the American media maggots, that Senate investigators were looking into a meeting between a member of President Trump's transition team, Wall Street financier Anthony Scaramucci, and an executive of an executive of a Russian investment fund before Trump took office. The story seemed to advance the narrative of ties between Trump campaign officials and people close to the Russian President Vladimir Putin. They can't not go with this. One problem. When challenged on the particulars of the story, CNN acknowledged that it couldn't stand by the story. It retracted the story, and it apologized to Scaramucci on Saturday. On Monday, Harris and the editor and reporter of the piece, Eric Lichtblau and Thomas Frank, resigned from CNN. CNN 0, the public 3. Which is a good score. The sequence of events led Trump to take a kind of victory lap on Tuesday. He turned to Twitter to bash CNN and other media outlets, including the Washington Post, that have aggressively reported on his associates' connections to Russia's officials, citing the 2016 campaign and pre-inaugural period. Now, in terms of looking at this story, I came across... I'm on Twitter. I'm on Twitter at BZEP, and I have my own blog at bloviatingzeppelin.net. I'm actually on Facebook. I'm trying to get a hold of Facebook. But I found this on Twitter, and I thought it was perfect. From a guy named Steve Hirsch. List of things more trusted than CNN. Number 1, breast milk from Bruce Jenner. Number 2, unprotected sex with Madonna. Number 3, having a drink with Bill Cosby. That's perfect. That's perfect. That's a perfect expression of where CNN is now. It's almost 20 minutes after the hour. This is going to take about 8 minutes, but I'm... okay, I've got to play. We're going to go into... the Project Veritas tape. I have some other things that I was going to go into. Project Veritas, James O'Keefe, they're the people that went undercover and with the abortion clinics, and they revealed all of that information, and they were actually prosecuted. Kamala Harris, who was the Attorney General in Fornicalia, decided that it was a good thing to shoot the messenger in terms of Project Veritas. Well, James O'Keefe is back with Project Veritas, and I want you to listen to this because he reveals what we already knew about CNN. This is wonderful.
Then why is CNN constantly like Russia this, Russia that?
Because it's ratings.
Because it's ratings?
Okay, set up. This is the undercover individual speaking to a CNN producer, a supervising producer named John Bonifield. And these are interactions between one of the Project Veritas members and a CNN supervising producer named John Bonifield. This is not made up. This is all live.
Our ratings are incredible right now.
Our ratings are incredible right now.
But honestly, you think the whole Russia shit is just like bullshit.
Could be bullshit. I mean, it's mostly bullshit right now. Like, we don't have any big giant proof.
Could be bullshit. I mean, it's mostly bullshit right now, like we don't have any big giant proof. That's the CNN producer admitting CNN's position.
I just feel like they don't really have it, but they want to keep digging.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the president is probably right to say, like, look, you are witch hunting me.
The supervising producer is admitting. And so I think the president is probably right to say, like, look, you are witch hunting me on tape, on video.
Like, you have no smoking gun, you have no real proof.
No smoking gun, no real proof.
And the CEO of CNN said in our internal meeting, he said, good job everybody covering the climate accords, but we're done with it, let's get back to Russia.
The CEO of CNN saying they covered the climate accords. Now it's time to dump as much shit, as much false and specious shit as we possibly can on Trump. That's their narrative. That's what they're going with.
Then why is CNN constantly like Russia this, Russia that?
Because it's ratings.
But honestly, you think the whole Russia shit is just like bullshit.
It's mostly bullshit right now. Like, we don't have any big giant proof.
I'm not going to give you a question.
Can you state categorically?
You are fake news.
You are fake news.
Fake news and attacking our network. I just want to ask you, sir.
I'm changing it from fake news, though.
Doesn't that undermine...
Very fake news.
I know, but aren't you...
Even if Russia was trying to swing an election, we try to swing their elections. We're in our CIA and doing shit all the time.
Fake news. We start our American
Now this is James O'Keefe.
Bobcat investigations inside America's media with Part 1, CNN. Our goal is to expose the real motivations behind the decision-making process at our dominant media corporations. Fake news. One story has monopolized President Trump's time in office like no other, especially on CNN. Russia. In fact, since the inauguration, CNN has mentioned Russia on their air nearly 16,000 times. So we sent our undercover reporters inside CNN to understand why, and to determine if CNN even believes that the story is even real. You're not going to believe what you're about to hear.
Oh, yes, we will.
Or maybe you will. I'd like to introduce you to CNN's supervising producer, John Bonifield, in Atlanta.
So you believe like the Russia thing's a little crazy, right?
Even if Russia was trying to swing an election, we try to swing their elections. We're in our CIA and doing shit all the time. Like, we're out there trying to manipulate governments. Like, you win.
Certainly, just like Barack Hussein Obama tried to influence the Israeli election so that Benjamin Netanyahu, whom Obama did not care for in the slightest because he didn't care for Israel, Obama spent money in order to attempt to overthrow and turn over the election for Benjamin Netanyahu. Absolutely correct.
Because you know the game and you play it right. She didn't play it right.
She didn't play it right, meaning Hillary Rodham Clinton.
Then why is CNN constantly like Russia this, Russia that?
Because it's ratings.
Because ratings?
Our ratings are incredible right now.
In the month of May, CNN's ratings were significantly higher than they were the year before. The Russia story and Trump have made CNN millions.
Because of...
So, my boss, I shouldn't say this, my boss a couple days yesterday, we were having a discussion about this dental shoot. And he's like, I just want you to know what we're up against here. And he goes, just to give you some context, President Trump pulled out of the climate accords, and for a day and a half we covered the climate accords, and the CEO of CNN said in our internal meeting, he said...
By the way, the CEO of CNN is a massive leftist by the name of Jeff Zucker, Z-U-C-K-E-R.
Good job, everybody, covering the climate accords, but we're done with it. Let's get back to Russia.
Back to Russia.
The CEO?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So...
This comes from the top. The very top. We didn't doubt it for a second. And CNN attempts to tell us from its own high horse that it's just unbiased news.
So even the climate accords, it was like, okay, a day or so, but we're moving back to Russia.
Bonifield says CNN's CEO Jeff Zucker demanded that his news channel get back to the ratings winner that Russia is for CNN. Was that an editorial call or a business call?
Both. Both. It's both. He discovered it's making him money. even though Rachel Madcow was proven wrong when she had Donald Trump's tax returns. Just that one ploy was enough to get lots of people over to watch CNN. So it's about the money. They're making money off of bullshit. Unmitigated, specious, lying bullshit. Planned, cogitated, pre-planned, thought out, strategic bullshit. It's making them money, and it's giving them ratings. Why wouldn't they?
So it's, I mean, I understand it's all ratings, right?
Oh, it's a
So
business. It's a business. People are like, the media has like an ethical... But...
Okay, that was the supervisor saying, oh, the media has an ethical... Meaning ethics? What the fuck are those?
all the nice, cutesy little ethics that used to get talked about in journalism school, you're just like, that's adorable.
He quantifies ethics as adorable, then says, this is a business.
Adorable. Yeah, this is a business. Especially cable news, you know. Cable news isn't the New York Times, and it's not even like NBC News. I mean, NBC News still gets 20 million viewers a night. Cable news is getting 1 million. So, like they gotta do what they gotta do to make their money.
They gotta do what they gotta do to make their money. Truthful or not, ethical or not, proper or not, immaterial.
I think. And so I love the news business, but
I find it so
I'm
fascinating.
very cynical about it. At the same time, so are most of my colleagues.
Imagine that. But still, they take the check, they cash it, and they go to bed at night. And then the next day, wake up, repeat, rinse.
Yeah, it's like I'm not alone.
Bonifield has worked for CNN as a journalist and producer for nearly 15 years. He not only gave us a tour of CNN's main newsroom, he gave us a window into the editorial bias and anti-Trump agenda of the organization.
I think that there are a lot of liberal CNN viewers who want to see Trump really get scrutinized, and I think if we would have behaved that way with President Obama and scrutinized everything that he was doing with as much scrutiny as we applied to Donald.
Okay, are you listening to this very closely? Because this is a wonderful admission. A series of admissions lead to a confession. This guy already jumped from a series of admissions to a confession. He's blah. He's vomiting everything out that we already suspected, and now we fucking know. And scrutinized everything that he was doing. If we scrutinized Obama as much as we scrutinize and applied that to Donald Trump,
I think our viewers would have been turned off. I think they would have thought like we were attacking him.
viewers would have thought that CNN was attacking Obama. They couldn't do that.
But I think our viewers right now, and I'm not saying all of our viewers are super liberals. I think there's just a lot of them.
Why else would you be watching CNN?
So Trump's good for business, you're saying?
Trump is good for business right now.
But honestly, you think the whole Russia shit is just bullshit?
Could be bullshit. I mean, it's mostly bullshit right now.
It's mostly bullshit right now, of course.
We don't have any big giant proof. But
proof? What do you need proof for? Facts. What do you need facts for? Backup. What do you need backup for? Just what do you need sources for? It used to be that in actual ethical journalism, those many centuries ago, if you had a piece of information from one person, you tried to back it up if you were ethical by 2 other sources. Those days are gone.
Then they say, well, there's still an investigation going on. And you're like, yeah. I don't know. If you were finding something, we'd know about it. But
if you were finding something, we'd know about it. Now, apply that from CNN, do what I call the logical extension, and now throw that into politics. You see how this is going, don't you? You certainly do. Folks, we're going to go to a break. Please. I'm not having a good time here, okay? We're very serious here. Please, come back.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Breaking news. According to the latest report coming out of SHR Media, a merchandise store to support both the Reaver of Common Sense and SHR Media has just been unleashed to the general public. Be forewarned that this site can be contagious and numerous items can be purchased to support the best news programming. Go to Reaver.one website and click on the store link to check out the merchandise.
Hello, I'm Matt, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is Hillsdale President Larry Arnn on the continuing relevance of the Constitution.
Many argue today that the Constitution is outdated because it addresses problems peculiar to the 18th century. Some parts of the Constitution do read rather quaintly. Consider the injunction against titles of nobility in Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution. But is that so outdated? The purpose of the injunction is to prevent the government granting special privileges to some for partisan reasons. This strikes at the heart of the rule of law. The crony capitalism so common today is a place where the government bestows favors and tax dollars on some businesses to give them a leg up over others. This is exactly the kind of thing the Constitution was meant to prohibit. The Constitution is not so outdated after all.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.com.
Times are dark. The people misled by corrupt politicians, lied to by establishment media, and deceived by the false messages of Islam. A nation in confusion needs a guide. It needs a man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me on Spreaker, SHR Media, High Plains Talk Radio, Live Rebooting Liberty, and YouTube for a unique brand of commentary on the unpleasant blind guy. Because truth is not always pleasant.
In a world controlled by corrupt politicians,
You got a business. You didn't build that.
a team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless and hope to the hopeless. Sackhead Sean.
Dude, I'm not saying Kafka was stupid, bro.
Sackhead Clint.
All good friends of ours usually show up drunk.
Also starring Sacco as the producer.
I'm a little bit drunk, 'cause I'm drinking.
They are the Sackheads Radio Show. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on SHRmedia.com.
Beware, the Jersey Takeover is here. Every Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can catch the Reaver of Common Sense show, hosted by Jersey Joe, right here on SHRmedia.com and HighPlainsDailyNews.com. Only Jersey can deliver hell like no one else, so consider this your fair warning.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome back to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon. Doing the job the American media maggots won't. Fundamentally changing America, one diaper at a time. Here is, courtesy of the SHR Media Network, the bloviating Zeppelin.
Boys and girls. Oh my God, that's a little bit hot. We'll have to turn that down a bit. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome back to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon. Now, I warned you in advance that we were going to have White Mamba on tonight. He is the official attorney of the Berserk Bobcat Saloon. With all the massive amounts of coin that I'm paying him, he is clearly money well spent. But there was an issue. There was a thing, and I have to go out of my way. That's still a little hot. Let's pot it down just a bit. I have to go out of my way to apologize to White Mamba, because there were two prior occasions on which me, mea culpa, my dig, my my deal, my problem, my issue is he called in. We were having terrible issues with the phones, and with one button last week, Sackhead Sean was able to show me, and I am actually trainable, and I'm crossing my fingers and my eyes and my teeth and my toes and my phalanges. I think it's going to work. I think the phone thing is really going to work. So the big question is bated breath, herring, mackerel, not sure which. Bated breath, White Mamba, are you there, sir?
Testing, 1, 2, 3, testing. Can you hear me, SHR?
Yes, I can.
Okay, am I coming in loud and clear?
I don't know about loud and clear. The one particular button that I had to press.
Okay, the mute button.
No. I unpressed things. Now I'm coming in really good. I'm not muting, and this particular button is on. It's
a little faint, Mary says. Yeah, I'm on my landline here today. Sometimes my cell is better.
Okay. I'll tell you what.
This is a little dicey of a phone.
Okay. Alrighty. Let me go into chat and see, because I called. All right,
yeah,
there it is.
Low,
yeah.
Dave's saying here.
Yep, I see it. I see it there. Now, the funny thing is that I have it adjusted in terms of what I was supposed to adjust. The little button. Let's see if I turn that off. How about now? When you say anything, can we hear you?
Can you hear me now, folks? Am I a little bit better? I'm speaking a little bit louder.
Oh,
Dave's
boy.
saying I'm about a 25. You're about 100, so that's pretty... Now.
This is really, really...
it's the curse of the Mamba.
It must be the curse of the Mamba, because I did the exact same thing with Tammy Jackson last Thursday.
Yeah.
She called in. Things were absolutely fine. Okay, tell you what. Could you do me a favor? And could you try on the cell phone, and we'll see.
I think so.
We'll see how that goes.
All right,
and
let's try that.
Let's try that, sir. All right, thank you.
Sure.
Oh boy. Technical stuff. Don't you love technical stuff? The funny thing is, I'm hearing myself really, really well, and I'm not hearing White Mamba quite as well. Okay, so I've got that button clicked, and we're going to look at this. Let's turn this up just a bit. This is what is known as a killer in radio. If you're going through Skype, Mark, be sure you're not allowing Skype to equalize. You know what? If I knew what... Okay. Let's try this. Let's try this again.
How does it sound now?
Oh.
Better?
Oh, that's 110% better.
Now I'm a little... Okay. Good.
Oh, that's so much better, it's not even funny. And I'm not laughing. Whatever the heck it was is done. Fabulous.
I think it was my landline this time. Last time we blamed it on my cell phone, but I think it was the adjustment. This time I think this phone that I have in the room is just more or less a ringer. We let it ring through the answering machine, so it's real crunchy. That's what we call it in the phone business. It's real.
Yes.
It's just sort of a throwaway phone that stays plugged in. So,
as Dave Milner says,
anyway,
we have snakeage. We actually have snakeage.
Oh, I saw that. Well, just a quick update if you haven't seen it in chat. The Florida Gators won their first national title in baseball tonight against LSU. They finished the series 2-0. It's a 3-game final series against LSU. For those keeping score at home. So it's a pretty big win. We've been in the College World Series 11 times, and this is the first time we've won it all. So it's a football town, and there will not be grease poles downtown and maniacs and cops with riot gear like there was for the football national titles that we won. But it's still a nice event, and I got the distinction of seeing them get blown out by Kentucky like 19-2 one night. The only game I went to this year, other than what I've seen on TV, of course. So, congratulations to them for anybody out there listening.
So anybody that's a Florida fan,
baseball.
There you go. Woo, baseball.
There you go, yeah.
I don't follow baseball. I just never learned it when I was a kid. I just didn't do that. Here's the deal. My dad was in the military. He was primarily gone. You know, the old thing of BZ sitting there and playing baseball with Dad. No, that never happened. Absolutely never.
Yeah.
Dave Milner does say, congratulations to the Gators. He says, outstanding.
Yeah, I saw that in the chat. So, so it's been a day of executive orders and opinions in baseball and cooking and cleaning and trying to trying not to overheat myself working outside.
Okay.
It rained today, so I didn't have much of a chance to get on to my construction project that I'm working on.
Well, the funny thing is, if it's okay, last time I was in Florida, I went to a Jacksonville Jags game when I was at FLETC. I was teaching at FLETC, which is in Brunswick, Georgia, the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center there. And so that was the last time that I was in back east. And unfortunately, it was the summertime. It was August, so obviously it's hot as hell and it's humid. It's about 95 degrees, and I'm outside training in that. And I have melanoma. That's a great thing to do. So I get checked every month. So tell me, sir, how hot is it in Florida? How hot was it today?
Today, well, it rained, so it didn't get that hot. Obviously, the humidity was high, but it's been low 90s we're starting to get our summer rains coming in now. We've had a pretty dry season so far, but now it's like every single day it's raining. So we don't, we run into these periods, we get a lot of rain. I like to tell people in my part of Florida, in Gainesville here, home of the Florida Gators, the breeze can oftentimes be listed on the Weather Channel as calm. So it's zero in all directions. And we're also known as Tree City with annoying pines. So everybody's allergies flare up. It really is a swamp. So I would rather be in Miami in the summer than Gainesville, because at least you have an ocean breeze. And it'll cool down a little bit at night.
I have to make one observation about Florida, and I never really stayed there for any length of time, but, when I did a lot of my training, I did a lot of training at FLETC in Georgia, which is, damn near the same thing. But in any event, when the thing that I could not understand, and I think it was at least, you can correct me on this, at least 5 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, does anybody or everybody remember when Florida was having all those fires? That I thought, that was the thing that I can't get. How can Florida have fires, wildfires? I don't understand that. The only thing I remember about Florida is the drenching humidity, the high heat, that you could have wildfires in Florida like we have in Fornicalia. I don't grok that concept at all.
Well, a lot of it pretty much is a seasonal thing. During the spring, which is our dry season, the humidity isn't too bad. So every year, especially like this year, we didn't have too many this year. We had a couple out there burning, but it literally, outside of my town, little town called Waldo, which is the biggest speed trap was the biggest speed trap in the southeast. Now they no longer have a police department because I think 90% of the city's revenue, is one of these places where you go from a 25 to a 30 to a 35 back down to in a stretch of a mile. I mean, this is literally pathetic. 2 cop cars out there writing tickets all day. So now they have no more police force, and the county police force goes out there to answer calls, but there's supposedly a statute in effect saying that so much of a city's revenue cannot come from just writing traffic tickets. And the point being, long story short, it was burning in Waldo a couple of years ago when I was delivering food. And at night when you get that inversion, with the temperature cooling down, you know, I could see embers like flying and hitting my car.
Wow.
I couldn't breathe. Yeah, and it usually is just a spring thing. Once these rains start like now, the wildfires are pretty much a thing of the past unless you get some kind of a flash fire from lightning, which we get plenty of down here too.
Well, yeah, because
I'm about 50
you get
miles north of Lightning Alley, they call it.
lots of storms. Hey, just a few things seem to have occurred today. Excuse me, this past couple of days, yesterday in particular, with regard to SCOTUS. And the thing that you and I had spoken about numerous times in the past here in the Saloon was these various rulings that came out of President Trump's executive order. One of them went to the Fourth Circuit. There was a ruling from a judge in Washington. There was a ruling from a judge in Hawaii. It popped over to the Fourth. It popped over to the Ninth. And now it went up to the Supreme Court. And I think there's a very important distinction to be made here, because a lot of people think that Trump won and that's it. That's not it at all. So can you tell us what actually did occur with regard to the Supreme Court and their opinion regarding Trump's travel ban, so to speak?
Okay. Like I mentioned to you before on Twitter, I spent quite a bit of time reading this case today. It was like a little law school flashback, getting into some of the nitty-gritty on it. So essentially what this case was that it was a petition for certiorari, which means, you know, we want you to hear the case, and it was also a motion to stay on the executive order.
Okay.
So basically, what the court did in, you know, a broad sweep, they more or less granted cert to put it on the calendar for the October term of this year to hear the case in full, to get to what we like to call the merits of the case. They also asked the court for relief as to basically overturning the injunctions that were leveled against the executive order that we spoke about.
Okay.
And they did uphold the executive order, if you will, or reversed or granted a stay against the injunctions. But it wasn't a complete validation of the executive order, every last piece of it.
No, that's true. That's true. There was an exemption.
But it does say something about the way the court is leaning on this. I think when I read your article, shameless plug on bloviatingzeppelin.net, correct?
Yes. Thank you very much.
WordPress.
Yeah, thank you very much.
For over 20 years, and these articles are great. But, you know, the two things that you pointed out, you know, that one, they more or less didn't get into this campaign language stuff. And they even more or less said that, you know, they intimated that it was kind of ridiculous. Secondly, it was a per curiam opinion, which I guess means no judge had the testicles to sign it to him or herself, just for the court. But there was no dissent. So that tells me that, well, that means that every judge either signed on to the opinion or signed on to the concurrence of Gorsuch and Thomas and Alito. So you've got a pretty good understanding of how the court's going to hopefully view this thing. And, you know, if anything, the concurrence and the dissent are more or less saying that the court didn't, they need to stay them in full. So in other words, you know, they didn't like the way that they piecemealed the reasoning together as to what parts of the injunction can stay, what parts of the executive order are enforceable, as to what parties, so on and so forth. So I mean, it's good if you really read through this case, I think it's a really good case for people to read. One, because it's short. Two, because it gets to the point, and it does a really good job of explaining the law and how they're going to go about applying it. It cuts to the chase. So we'll see what happens in October now, when they can get into some of the other issues that the government wanted relief or get a ruling or an opinion on, which they didn't really address, to any major significance. So yeah, I mean, it's a great opinion to read. It's a lot better written. As it's restored a little bit of my faith in the judicial system here after the far-fetched opinions that we've been going through that seem to really just strain human reasoning as to finding, religious discrimination and against non-citizens and these wide classes of people that have no connection to the U.S. at all. But there's some things in this too that you can see by looking at the opinion. You can go through and go, oh well, now somebody can try this, now somebody can try that. So it's going to be interesting to see if there's some more litigation, as Justice Thomas warned about, given the ruling in this, and what's going to happen between now and October. Anyway, that's sort of just a big sort of a big wide brush view of it, if that makes any sense to anybody.
Like you said, the two things that I thought were absolutely that they had to be addressed in some fashion for validation, but they were not addressed, and to me, the non-addressing of these issues told me everything that I needed to know about where SCOTUS, I suspect, was going to go, because as you already indicated, it made absolutely no reference whatsoever to any of Trump's campaign rhetoric because it's not valid. It doesn't have anything to do with the case. They looked at the actual case before them and made that decision. That's what I called fake law when back on the left coast here where I am, that was a major concern. The second thing was the Muslim ban. It was a ban. It was pointing evil fingers at just Muslims. Well, no, there were 7 countries that were affected, 6. If I'm not mistaken now, they dropped 1, when in fact, I think they should be addressing and adding another one, which is Saudi Arabia. That's just my particular opinion on it as well. But because it was not a Muslim ban. There are 50 nations all across the globe that are Muslim. The most massive number of Muslims are in Indonesia, not in the Middle East, but it's how Islam is practiced. It's practiced differently up to this point, primarily in the Middle East, as opposed to Indonesia, Africa, North Africa. That's another issue. That's going desperate places. But those particular issues, those 2 issues of Islam and also of the rhetoric from the Trump campaign, bespoke volumes to me because they didn't include that information at all. And when I first heard about this, it was like, my God, how refreshing is it to see that there are actual adults in law? It must be geographical. It happens to be with the people on the left coast. And you and I discussed this very distinctly any number of times. And you were very, very polite. I have to tell you, you were extremely polite to the law, and you took a sort of a semi-wait-and-see attitude, and you didn't point fingers, so that's good for you. You took the high moral ground, as well you should, because you are, in fact, an attorney. But I have to say, I was very heartened when I saw this. Now, there was, though, as you mentioned, an exception to this. And Is that worth going into?
Yes, I would think so. Essentially, what the court said, they turned the preliminary injunctions. I know I'm reading this right off the page, but I took a couple notes. Basically, barring enforcement of the 2C entry suspension, we grant the government's application to stay the injunction to the extent the injunctions prevent enforcement of 2C with respect to foreign nationals who lack any bona fide relationship with a person or entity in the United States. We leave the injunctions entered by the lower courts in place with respect to respondents and those similarly situated as specified in this opinion. So what they're saying is, if you don't have a bona fide relationship with a person or entity in the United States, then we can enforce 2C against you. Now, those were a lot of the specific exceptions that we discussed the last time I was able to get through.
Right.
That were built into the second order. If you remember that we talked about the fact that after the first executive order was published, the second one came out, and it specifically had some hardship exemptions for these cases where, you've got the wife overseas and what have you, the sick grandma who wants to visit her grandson.
Right.
So they more or less basically said that the injunction, as the lower courts applied these things to those immediate cases, like the Hawaii case, for example, and the Maryland case, they're saying that we're not going to touch those cases. It's not, in other words, I don't know if you saw this footnote, the court received a letter from counsel on June 24th for the counsel for Doe in the Maryland case, advising that Doe's wife received an immigrant visa on or about June 22nd. The parties may address a significant of that development in the merit stage. Does not affect our analysis of the stay issues in these cases. They didn't want to get into, do you have standing to bring this case, because they were dealing with the stay issues. So it's kind of a technical point, but it's pretty interesting how these arguments were framed and what the government seeks from the full case. So I think the government's probably pretty happy with this, but there is a lot of wiggle room. And if you look into the concurrence/dissent, Justice Thomas more or less gets to the crux of the issue. Says basically, I fear the court's remedy will prove unworkable. Today's compromise will burden executive officials the task of deciding on peril of contempt whether individuals from the 6 affected nations who wish to enter the U.S. have a sufficient connection to a person or entity in this country. The compromise will also invite a flood of litigation until this case is finally resolved on the merits as parties and courts struggle to determine what exactly constitutes a bona fide relationship, who precisely has a credible claim to that relationship, and whether the relationship is formed simply to avoid 2C. So the court, in the majority opinion, per curiam opinion, basically says, it tries to define bona fide relationship, okay, close family relationship, you were accepted at a university, you accepted an offer of employment. What's not bona fide is if some activist group puts you on a list and then sues the government on your behalf because you can't come in. But you can understand how now, what if universities want to turn around and go, F Donald Trump, we want to admit a bunch of Syrians.
Yes.
Under the pretense of, hey, they're accepted here, but so those are the types of things, how are you going to get around that? He's my brother. Can you document that? You know what I mean? So there's going to be a lot of, I'm waiting again to see how this kind of plays out in the world that you and I live in, where there's real immigration problems and people getting killed by terrorists and things like that. So, I'm happy with the rationale and with the way the court's thinking. What the effects of this are going to be and how they're going to go about handling the October, the merits, if they're going to get into these into whether this religious test, what specifically went wrong with what they found about the Hawaii court reasoning, but it sounds like they're not going to be extending right to foreign nationals to the same extent that the Hawaii opinion especially went way overboard and just took it to a whole different level, and they don't seem like they're going to be buying his argument whatsoever.
Okay.
Justifications for the ban.
White Mamba, can you hold on just for a second? We're going to go to a break. Folks, We're speaking to the White Mamba. He is the official attorney of the Berserk Bobcat Saloon. We're going to take a break, and we will be right back with the White Mamba and his opinions and thoughts about SCOTUS and all the important things that did occur this week. Please return.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, it's Sean from the Sackheads Radio Show, also one of the owners here at the SHR Media Network. Are you opinionated? Have you ever wanted to do your own show? Have you ever heard somebody like the Sackheads and go, yeah, I could probably do that better? Well, now's your chance. Send me a 5-minute clip at sackheadsradio@gmail.com, and maybe you can be part of the SHR broadcasting team. sackheadsradio@gmail.com.
Times are dark. The people are misled by corrupt politicians, lied to by establishment media, and deceived by the false messages of Islam. A nation looking for direction needs a guide. It needs a man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me on Spreaker, SHR Media, Pundit Press Radio, and YouTube through the SHR Media page for a different kind of commentary on the unpleasant blind guy. Because the truth is not always pleasant.
In a world controlled by corrupt politicians,
You got a business. You didn't build that.
a team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless and hope to the hopeless. Sackhead Sean.
Dude, I'm not saying coffee is stupid, bro.
Sackhead Clint.
All good friends of ours usually show up drunk.
Also starring Sacco as the producer.
I'm a little bit drunk, 'cause I'm drinking.
They are the Sackheads Radio Show. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on SHRmedia.com.
The bloviating Zeppelin. He's big-footed enough radio shows to last a lifetime, courtesy of Sean, Clint, Ken, and Jersey Joe. Now it's time for him to waddle on his own 2 feet via the glorious SHR Media. Gird thy loins for the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon. Coming soon to ossicles near you. Excelsior.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome back to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon. It's Tuesday, June 27th, the year of our Lord 2017, and we are speaking to the official attorney of the Berserk Bobcat Saloon. It is White Mamba back to grace us, and thank God, though we had some things that were going on at the beginning of the show, he's back, he's on the telephone, we can understand him, the volumes are fine. Thank God. First question for you back at the top of the hour for this segment, sir, and that's this. After having read all of the opinions that were prior out of the 4th and the 9th, did you expect that the Supreme Court was pretty much going to do what it did on Monday?
I think I'm beyond trying to expect anything from anybody in a case like this. I really don't know. initially, when we first discussed this case months ago now, dealing with Judge Robart, I just thought that even the appellate courts would say this is BS, that they would not even find standing, that they would give the president the deference he needs, and that would kind of be the end of it. Then we got into these other cases, and the Ninth Circuit being the Ninth Circuit doing what they do, and I believe the Fourth Circuit doing what they did. And, you know, I thought the Supreme Court would straighten this out in some fashion, or at least say this just isn't a question that we feel. It's more of a political question than it is a question of law. But now that we're into it, I think they're on the right track. But again, it's another one of these cautiously optimistic. I'm very interested in seeing what comes out in October and how, if there's more litigation before this that tries to, you know, use some of these exceptions and push the limits of those to kind of test, you know, what we're going to consider to be a connection to the United States. You know, what's going to be a hardship case. They also ruled in this case that immigrants is not a firm cap, that if people meet hardship exemptions or have these connections, then they can exceed the cap of the 50,000. So, you know, there's a lot of wiggle room in this, but the language is pretty clear that at least the court's being rational about this, and that they're not buying, you know, the campaign language and all of the leftist hysteria. But you got to remember, we're dealing with, like you said, safety pins and diaper manufacturers are working overtime.
Yep.
And you got to think that for us to look at this and say, well, this makes some sense here, there's going to be a bunch of people out there spinning this thing, and there's going to be a bunch of people crying about their hardships, and there's going to be a bunch of people trying to make names for themselves by bringing these cases up. And, you know, we'll see who can sneak in and get one past the goalie, as they say. And maybe we'll have, you know, a flood of litigation on this, like Justice Thomas says. Whether that's going to be something that the court can kind of address in October inadvertently by, even if those cases don't make it to that they come out with a clear ruling about these types of things and maybe get into some of the exceptions. And, you know, the lower courts are going to have to deal with that somehow, or it could be another set of cases that wind up coming up to the Supreme Court. So this may, you know, this is my opinion, you know, maybe it's halfway through the game here. Maybe Congress will step in and do something like I suggested. But it doesn't look like they're buying the Donald Trump, you know, violated immigration law argument that they came up with. That's another point that they made. You know, they're just not going to go. It doesn't sound like they're going to go for these real speculative and drummed up emotional kind of arguments. But we'll see, you know, what the lower courts do too. I mean, there's a whole bunch of districts out there and a whole bunch of appellate courts that, you know, can churn these cases out indefinitely, and there's enough public interest groups and immigration reform groups that want to bring everybody in that are fueled and have some money behind them, and they'll litigate just about anything that they can litigate and get a ruling on. So, you know, we'll see how it goes.
There were three issues that I should like to address before you leave. Two of them have to do with opinions, and one of them, well, I'll tell you what, let's just start with this one first. I had heard, and I made no bones about this, I'd been saying it since actually December, but January is when I actually started to write about it, is I had heard way back when that there was going to be a second SCOTUS opening coming sometime in the summer. Now, the newest rumor that occurred recently is that it might be Anthony Kennedy. So that may give President Trump two vacancies in which to fill. So my questions, I think, to you are, number one, does that seem reasonable to you? And number two, what kinds of issues or problems do you see with a second opening for a nomination to fill another SCOTUS vacancy?
One, I read up a little bit on the Justice Kennedy situation, and he has quite a bit of ties to Sacramento, by the way. I should send you this article I read.
Really? I didn't know.
Yes. Yeah, he taught at a law school out there, and his mentor. Anyway, it's a whole thing about his evolution on gay rights. And he was taught by this professor who was a closeted gay. They say that everybody knows he's gay. But anyway, his whole evolution on a lot of the Defense of Marriage Act and the way that he's kind of come down to the more liberal side on a lot of these types of issues. Point being, they said that he called not an emergency, he had a reunion of a lot of his former law clerks. Mm-hmm. And they thought that one article I read said that they thought that was kind of tipping his hand, that he was going to step down and make some type of an announcement. Ironically, an old roommate of mine was a law clerk to Justice Kennedy. He's a University of Chicago grad in law school, law review and all that. So he clerked for Justice Kennedy, but I don't talk to him anymore. He's in the ether. I'm actually trying to practice law. Anyway, point being, I shouldn't take that kind of a rip on him. He's actually a pretty good guy, but once you get funneled into that Ivy League, there's lawyers and then there's God.
Yes.
So he's sort of in the God status already. So there's not too much that I could come up with, without him having a superior view of it. About anything.
Right.
I mean, we could talk about fishing, so he'll have some way to one-up me on that. Well, point being, not to bag on the guy. He'd make a fantastic Supreme Court judge himself. But, they thought that this was going to be it, but they said, well, he didn't make any announcement today. I'm starting to think, he might hang on because it seems like the court right now is really, they got some juicy material now. And if anything, sorry to say it, but almost without exception, the ego that some of these people have, you got to think he's going to probably want to hang around for some of these juicier cases that are coming up about abortions and, religious rights, the case about the school with the used tire pavement,
right,
that you've probably heard of.
Right.
I think that came out today too, or yesterday. And then you've got this. So I got to wonder if he's not going to hang around for a little bit longer, maybe another term or so. But I don't know. I mean, these, Supreme Court justices aren't really known for being all that, readable. They kind of take pride in sitting down and not applauding during the State of the Union addresses and things like that. They're supposed to live with a certain amount of decorum, and I understand that. But so I tend to think that Ginsburg and Kennedy will be gone before Trump's first term. But these people can hang on indefinitely into their 90s. A lot of them die off of the court, as we like to say. So, it just depends on how much you want to hold on to that position and what you think is important in life. And unless you get impeached or you're just completely berserk, no pun intended.
None taken.
Right. You could sit there and just about be on life support and, have your clerks pump out opinions. And if you like the lifestyle, it's the best job you can get as far as job security goes and as far as prestige goes in the legal field. So, you know, I don't know. I don't know what to say. I don't know if you've heard anything that's more than a hard rumor about Justice Kennedy, or if you think it's something, you know. There's always the health issues with people.
Right.
They speculated. Well, they don't even speculate about Ginsburg. She's falling asleep all the time, and what have you. But, you know, I've not heard anything, you know, hard about her retiring. She sounds like she may die off the court, you know, or who knows. So anyway,
there were two people that was
have much of a thought about it.
There were two people specifically in politics that were talking about it. One was Chuck Grassley and the other one was Ted Cruz. And the information I got was someone that's still connected in law enforcement back east.
Okay.
Statistically speaking, though, there are three individuals that I'm specifically eyeing, just like you mentioned. There's Ruth Bader Ginsburg. There's Anthony Kennedy. They're both in the 80s. Stephen Breyer is 78. So I'm thinking, like you say, depending upon their health, these are the people that I think will go. But I can't not see that at least one opening will occur. Okay, let's say if it doesn't occur in 2017, I kind of tend to think that it might. Then I'm thinking 2018. If 2018, I can quite logically see that if another justice goes, I could see perhaps another justice consider, well, if he or she went, perhaps it's time for me. I need to go fishing some more, etc. I still think that there could be total 3 vacancies that President Trump could potentially have for nominations during his term. Now, let me ask you another
First
question.
Term, if he's on his second term, it could be more.
Oh, yes.
There will be more.
Oh, my gosh, yes. But let me ask you, we see what Neil Gorsuch has done already. I think he's livened up that particular bench. But what do you foresee? Let's say that there's another opening. And let's say that President Trump makes a good, rational, logical nomination and it gets through. I'm not even going to talk about the politics of it. That's something entirely separate. But what would you see about the complexion of the court with 2 vacancies having been filled by Trump, and what would be the future for SCOTUS?
Yeah, that's the thing. See, a lot of people, you know, they talk about Gorsuch, which is great, and he's a fantastic justice and will be for a long time, God willing.
Yes.
You know, but he's replacing Scalia. So you aren't going to get much better than Scalia, who's sort of, you know, an icon in his own right. So
his opinions were wonderful.
Yeah, I've read a lot of Justice. Justice Scalia spoke at our school and was torn into by a bunch of people with totally ridiculous questions. But that was a speech I remember. He came in and spoke to our law school. I think it was my 3rd year. And the student newspapers talked about Scalia scowls at law school, and people were asking him, you know, digging into him about certain cases, and he handled himself so well.
Oh, of course.
Really, he has some ties to the Cleveland area where I went to law school. I think he practiced administrative law up there for a while. And just a brilliant justice. I don't agree with 100% of what he says, but I really enjoy the fact that he you know, he really digs into law, and he's really somebody who, you know, is a fantastic teacher and influenced just a bunch of people that I think that Gorsuch clerked for him.
You're right. I think you're right.
Right. Just like Ted Cruz clerked for Justice Rehnquist, who was another justice I really admired a lot. But yeah, I think as long as Trump stays away from that compromise, you know, we got our guy in, and now we're going to kind of go and throw the Dems a softball and get this guy in that Obama wanted in, that, was like this recess appointment or whatever. It wasn't a recess appointment, but you know, they didn't want to confirm somebody during during Obama's last year.
Correct.
You know, if they dig that guy up, you know, so they got to be careful, and you never know with the Supreme Court justice. There's huge history, you know, of these people turning when they get to this position because you aren't going any higher, and if you hit it when you're in your early 50s, you could completely swing around, and that's sort of what, or at least become more moderate. That's sort of what happened with Justice O'Connor. If you remember Sandra Day O'Connor,
certainly
kind of was the swing vote. And now Kennedy's kind of considered by some people to be a turncoat. He's fairly liberal on certain issues, but he's pretty conservative on others. So these swing vote guys become sort of they sort of run the court. It's not like the Warren Court or what have you. Now it's sort of like that one guy who you thought was conservative, and now he's kind of, you know, you don't quite understand their voting patterns. It's a lot more complex than that, and I give the justices a lot of leeway because sometimes you look at the results of a case and you don't really read the rationale of it. You don't really know what's going on. And you kind of go, well, this guy just made this liberal ruling. And then when you look at the facts of the case, you go, well, I would have probably ruled the same damn way. It's just that it just didn't read right to the public or the way the media spun it. But certainly Kennedy has a lot. If he goes and they nominate another justice in the line of a Gorsuch or a Scalia or a Thomas or an Alito, it's going to be a big conservative swing for the court. And,
here's one thing
it can make a huge difference.
Here's one thing you didn't mention, and I think this spoke volumes, because the first thing that I thought of when you talked about justices who were kind of moving back and forth, you didn't mention Roberts, and the first thing I thought of was Roberts and Obamacare. That's the first thing that popped into my brain.
Yeah. And Roberts, yeah, that's exactly the type of thing. You know, but generally speaking, if you go on, you know, I urge people to go on and look at the statistics and see how similar the voting patterns are between certain justices, which ones agree with their opinions. And it's like you'll find out that, you know, even people that you wouldn't think agree 70% of the time on these cases do. And it's, you know, that's why I think this 9-0 opinion says something about the way you view the court, that there's a certain level where you're just not going to be able to get too much BS by these guys, that there's a standard and there's a history there that you have to respect when you're dealing with the United States Supreme Court.
Thank God.
Even the more liberal wings of it, like the Kagans and the
Sotomayor,
Ginsburg, are not gonna just sit there and go, you know, they might be activists, but they're not, even in their activist best, they're not like a lot of these rogue district court justices who are going to come up with these arguments like the guy in Hawaii did. The Supreme Court, you know, he's not going to sit there and get anybody to join into an opinion like that if he was on the Supreme Court. I mean, there is a standard there, even amongst, you know, there's a threshold there that you're going to have to meet for things like standing. There's a certain way that you're going to have to bring this case. There's a certain way you're going to have to give deference to the president. You're going to have to be able to read an effing statute and respect it for what Congress made it out to be. I mean, the court even says in this case that at the same time the government's interest in enforcing 2C and the executive's authority to do so are undoubtedly at their peak when there is no time between the foreign national of the United States. Thank you. I could have told you that 5 years ago. But you see what I mean? I mean, nobody... Yes. You could say that to Justice, you know, Sotomayor or Justice Kagan, and she's going to have to deal with it. And, you know, they're going to have to come out with something that is reasonable, that's not going to fly in the face of common sense, statutes, the law, judicial tradition, deference to the president, deference to your, stare decisis on your own decisions. I mean, whereas it seems like these circuits and district courts now, that's going to be a key for Trump, in that there's quite a bit of district court openings
Yes.
that aren't confirmed. And, that's really where it all happens. I mean, you know this from what you've done in criminal law. I had a guy who was one of my teachers as an undergrad, who was the assistant public defender here in my county, who did a lot of high-profile murder cases for people who couldn't afford, a private attorney. And he said, if you go ahead and you start waiving certain rights at trial and you think you're going to win them on appeal, he's like, when you waive them, they're gone forever, man. Good luck getting your appeal heard. And having a judge, go through the record and see your point of view on it. You better make an objection then, or it's gone for good.
Yes.
He's right. And that's usually what the district courts rule is the end of it.
Right, because
there's only it's 5 years down the road.
Yeah, there's only so much time and so many cases that the Supreme Court can hear. That's the unusual aspect of it. Most of that stuff, the bulk of it, never even gets close to the U.S. Supreme Court building at all. Now, we've got 3 more minutes left. And there were 2 other cases that I noted on Monday went 7-2. And one of them was with regard to the U.S. Supreme Court came out and said that taxpayer-funded grants for playgrounds available to nonprofits under a state program could not be denied to schools run by a church. And you mentioned Justice Roberts. Justice Roberts in this particular case wrote, the consequence is, in all likelihood, a few extra scraped knees, but the exclusion of Trinity Lutheran from a public benefit for which it is otherwise qualified solely because it's a church is odious to our Constitution all the same and cannot stand. Kudos to that. We won another one. Then we lost another one, 7-2. Where the Supreme Court said that it is not going to hear a California gun case, which basically left back here in Fornicalia the state's strict limits on concealed weapons. So SCOTUS said, nope, we're not even going to hear that one. And the other one with religious liberty, that did happen to go our way. So it's win and lose, but I think there's the clouds are parting and the horizon is getting brighter. What do you say, sir?
Yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic. I love that expression because that's really all you can be. I mean, you think of where we were back in November, bracing ourselves for the worst and hoping for the best with, imagine if Hillary was in office. Imagine the wheels coming off. I mean, I'm grateful that.
Oh my God! Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we were thinking it was almost the end of the world here, or the end of this country as we knew it. We'd have a flood of immigrants coming in. We'd have institutionalized feminism. We'd have, we'd probably all be wearing, headdresses as men. Who the hell knows? Whatever this lady was, we'd probably be at war with Russia if that ever goes away. I mean, so I'm grateful for the little things, but it's like you say, it's like an athlete, you never be satisfied, be grateful. Be able to kind of say, okay, we've got a ways to go. We've got to dig ourselves out of this hole, and at least we've got some adults in the room now that are going to put forth radical ideas like, peeing in the restroom according to your genitalia.
Yes.
Marrying people of the opposite sex. But these ideas that have been around since Adam and Eve, still apply today. And there's this thing called the Constitution. There's things like Law and Order,
Yeah.
things like law enforcement. You know, I think it just gets to the point where it's like a bunch of kids in the room. They screw everything up, and then mom and dad have to come in and fix it.
Exactly.
And eventually, these people are either just going to have to say, okay, we lost. Let's let these guys do it. And then when our country gets built up again, we'll just wind up electing another liberal and get into GOWP syndrome again, like we did with Obama.
Yep.
In my opinion, I think it was white guilt that got him elected as much as anything else. Sorry, but that's just the truth. And we did our experiment with socialism. We did our experiment with globalism, and it failed.
Yes,
And we'll do
abjectly.
it again someday.
Yes.
I have no doubt that there will be people stupid enough out there that when things start to go good again, it's going to be back to the old, you know, let's just give our country away again, and let's bleed on foreign soil for a bunch of people that could give a shit less about us, and let's let this country go to crap, and then another adult's going to have to come in and clean up. Anyway,
Folks,
I know
that's exactly it. It's the bottom of the hour. We're going to have to go on a break. White Mamba, thank you ever so kindly for being here in the saloon, and we are going to have you back if it works for you. So thank you ever so kindly for being here tonight in the saloon. I know it's very, very late for you. It's oh my God, it's 12:30. So thank you ever so kindly. And folks, we're going to go to a break, and we shall be right back. Don't you tune away. Thank you.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, it's Sean from the Sackheads Radio Show, also one of the owners here at the SHR Media Network. Are you opinionated? Have you ever wanted to do your own show? Have you ever heard somebody like the Sackheads and go, yeah, I could probably do that better? Well, now's your chance. Send me a 5-minute clip at sackheadsradio@gmail.com, and maybe you can be part of the SHR broadcasting team. sackheadsradio@gmail.com.
Times are dark. The people are misled by corrupt politicians, lied to by establishment media, and deceived by the false messages of Islam. A nation looking for direction needs a guide. It needs a man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me on Spreaker, SHR Media, Pundit Press Radio, and YouTube through the SHR Media page for a different kind of commentary on the unpleasant blind guy. Because the truth is not always pleasant.
Hey, this is Mim from Freedom Fest, the world's largest gathering of free minds. Join your friends from SHR Media at the beautiful Paris Resort in Las Vegas, Nevada, July 19th through the 22nd for 3 amazing days of liberty-oriented discussion, investment advice, and the Anthem Film Festival. It's our big 10th anniversary, featuring keynote speaker William Shatner and Freedom Fest favorites, including Steve Forbes, Jim Rogers, Lee Edwards, David Boaz, Doug Casey, Dinesh D'Souza, John Stossel, Lisa Kennedy, Grover Norquist, Peter Schiff, and many more. Don't miss out. Register at freedomfest.com for $100 off the regular registration rate when you use the all-caps code SHR Media.
Featuring right thinking from a left brain and doing the job the American maggots won't. BZ is fundamentally changing America one diaper at a time. Just when safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, where the speech is free, but the drinks are not. The Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night, commencing at 11 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. Pacific, where pushback is a requisite art form in and of itself. Let your ossicles be truly liberated when you listen to the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon, only on SHR Media Network. No ferrets were harmed in the making of this ad.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, Welcome back to the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon. Welcome back to you one and all. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening live. Thank you for listening in the podcast. And thank you for being involved in chat. Chat is the place to be. Things are going to be changing on the SHR Media Network in the not too terribly distant future. I want to give a little bit of a promo to what's going on. I saw that Dan Butcher was in the chat room today. And I should care to point out that Dan is feeling a heck of a lot better, to the point where we're going to go back to the thing that we were going to install on Thursday before he wasn't feeling too well. This Thursday and subsequent Thursdays, I'm going to have Dan Butcher on in the saloon, and we're going to have our own tete-a-tete back and forth for 15 minutes, half hour, and I'm looking greatly forward to having Dan there. So it's sort of a weekly kind of thing. On Thursdays, on the Aftermath, we're going to have Dan Butcher when the show first kicks off, and that'll be absolutely wonderful. Also, there's an article that I'm going to go into in just a bit that Jeff Dunitz wrote today, and I just want to let everybody know I'm going to have Jeff Dunitz on in about a week or so. And we're going to get to the bottom of what and who Jeff happens to be. He's a great guy. If you don't already read him at lidblog.com, you absolutely should. We were talking earlier about CNN and how this particular individual named John Bonifield, who was a CNN supervising producer, how he let the cat out of the bag. And let's continue with some of that, if we will. I want to hear some of the words that he's saying.
The way these leaks happen, they'd leak it. It'd leak. If there was something really good, it would leak.
Yeah. It would have leaked before voting, I would say. If anything was good out there, it would have came out already.
Yeah, the leaks keep leaking, and there's so many great leaks, and it's amazing, and I just refuse to believe that if they had something really good like that, that wouldn't leak, because we've been getting all these other leaks, so I just feel like they don't really have it, but they...
I just feel that they don't really have it. He's admitting it. He's admitting CNN is making all this crap up.
They want to keep digging.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the president is probably right to say, like, look, you are witch hunting me. Like, you have no smoking gun. You have no real proof.
This is the guy admitting, and so I think the president is probably right to say, like, look, you are witch hunting me. You have no smoking gun. You have no real proof.
No real proof, he says. And that speaks volumes about today's mainstream media.
Hell yes.
Bonifield says CNN loves the Russia story, not because it's true, but because people want it to be true. They're feeding their audience a false narrative in order to get ratings. Their enthusiasm to report false news is getting the better of them. On Saturday, CNN imposed strict internal restrictions on all future Russia stories after they had to delete and retract a story that was poorly sourced. And yesterday, 3 CNN staffers resigned, victims of fake news.
Oh, boo-hoo-hoo. 3 CNN people. Now, here's the interesting point. CNN is kind of going mea culpa today. What are they going to do next week? I submit we're not going to even... There won't even be a week passing before CNN is going to shove their boot up the arse of someone else and create more fake news, which is single-sourced. That's what all of this stuff has been. A single source, unverified.
So where does that leave us? The American people are fed up with fake news. And the mainstream media, they cannot trust. It's corporate greed, market pressures, managers without integrity, newsroom bosses without courage, journalists who don't even leave their desks. The very purpose of journalism is to expose the world for what it is, not to create false political narratives in order to make money. The American people are frustrated because they have nowhere left to go to get actual information. This is just part 1 of the CNN series. We have so much more that we will bring you on video as our American Pravda investigations continue. Every dishonest television network, newspaper, and social media company is now on notice. You're being watched. We're coming after you. And while the whole broken, rotten media machine may not come tumbling down, maybe they'll wake up.
Isn't it odd that you actually have to do sort of a Mike Wallace 60 Minutes thing on the media to get the media to do their damn jobs? If you remember, wasn't it the media that said and pointed the finger at George Bush and said he has an incredibly incurious mind? I would point that damning finger right back at the media. You have an absolutely incurious mind. You just as soon take a press release from the Obama administration and bing, that's all you need to know about the Obama administration. Now, certainly Trump is a target-rich environment, but you're doing it wrong. You're doing it absolutely, absolutely wrong. So when it actually begins to blow back on you, I'm sorry, the schadenfreude just slips back in with regard to me, and there are no tears. There aren't even crocodile tears for you. I can't even summon up some crocodile tears for CNN. After all, it's all about their ratings. It's all about how they're looked at in the leftist environment and how many cocktail parties in the D.C. area and the Beltway they can continue to attend and speak glibly about. They are CNN. They are the cable news network. They are the most trusted name in news, except no longer. Well, let's see. Wasn't it the American media maggots who said, hey, look, there is no such thing as voter fraud? There is election tampering by the Russians, but voter fraud? Wrong ballots on behalf of Democrats? No, perish the thought. That doesn't happen. Well, yes, except for an article published today by Jeff Dunitz, the Yid with Lid, lidblog.com, and his headline is this: Virginia man tossed in jail for registering dead people to vote. When I first read that headline, I thought, this must be someone from Chicago. That's the first thing that came to my brain. So Jeff writes, there's an old saying, when in Virginia, don't do what Illinoisans do. Andrew Spiels, a 21-year-old James Madison University student, will spend between 100 and 120 days in the pokey for registering dead people to vote. Spiels admitted to filing the registering the dead folks in August of 2016 while making $350 a week working for a Democrat-affiliated group called Harrisonburg Votes. This is Virginia. Apparently, he was having some sort of an issue meeting his quota. So when you have a problem meeting your quota, let's see, what do you do? In July 2016, Spiels' job was to register as many voters as possible and reported to Democrat campaign headquarters in Harrisonburg, a U.S. Attorney's Office spokesman said. In August of 2016, Spiels was directed to combine his registration numbers with those of another individual because their respective territories overlapped. After filling out a registration form for a voter, Spiels entered the information into a computer system used by the Virginia Democrat Party to track information such as name, age, address, and political affiliation. Every Thursday, an employee volunteer hand-delivered the paper copies of the registration forms to the registrar's office in Harrisonburg. Apparently, though, the 21-year-old tried to register the wrong dead people. I hate it when you register the wrong damn dead people. The fraudulent registrations, some of which were filed using the names of dead people, were detected when a Harrisonburg elections employee noticed that a new form had been filled on behalf of the late father of a Rockingham County judge. Uh-oh. A second employee noticed a problem with another form because she knew the ex-wife of the person named on the form. Oh, your circle of friends is getting smaller and smaller. They also noticed that the form submitted in the name of the deceased had incorrect middle names, birth dates, and or social security numbers, which is an indication that they were fraudulent or that when you die, you apparently lose your memory. The registrar's office learned that the individuals named in these forms had not, in fact, submitted the new voter registrations. The assistant registrar's personal knowledge of the names of some of the individuals named in the falsified documents facilitated the detection of the crime. Now, as Jeff writes, this was not a major voter fraud scandal, just one kid and a few dead people. However, not mentioned was the Illinois Democrat Party having contacted Spiels and offered him a job. Well, not yet, but he does fill their methodology, as Jeff points out. Jeff, excellent article. Thank you ever so kindly. Now, as you well know, I am a fan of Judge Napolitano. I appreciate his witty insights on any number of things, and he made a particular statement 2 days ago, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was over the weekend, and it was over Fox Business News, and it had to do with Loretta Lynch. And this was so glorious and so wonderful, I'd care to play it here, because there are some very, very important fingers being pointed in places you didn't think, and I didn't think, that Judge Napolitano would go or think or say.
The Senate Judiciary Committee looking for answers from Loretta Lynch on whether or not she intervened in the Clinton email server investigation. One of the questions in the letter to Loretta Lynch reading, quote, "During your time in the Justice Department, did you ever have communications with former DNC chairwoman Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz, her staff, her associates, or any other current or former DNC officials about the Clinton email investigation?" Let's bring in Fox News senior judicial analyst Judge Andrew Napolitano. Judge, can they force Loretta Lynch to testify?
Yes, of course they can force Loretta Lynch to testify. I agree essentially with...
I did not think so. This to me is illuminating. I thought, no, you can't force Loretta Lynch to testify. Judge Napolitano says, yes, you can.
What former Attorney General Alberto Gonzales told Maria yesterday in the clip that you just ran, but I would actually extend it one step farther. There is enough evidence here, just on the basis of the little snippets given to the Senate Intelligence Committee by former FBI Director Jim Comey, that Mrs. Lynch was either conflicted or working at odds with the Justice Department and in behalf of Mrs. Clinton's campaign and the DNC when she told them to use different terminology for the investigation. Now, the terminology really doesn't matter. The FBI was investigating Mrs. Clinton anyway, but the terminology, let's call it a matter, not an investigation. This resulted in some FBI agents teasing the director, saying, oh, you're now the director of the Federal Bureau of Matters rather than the Federal Bureau of Investigations. But the terminology may be indicative of a mindset on the part of Attorney General Lynch that she was going to do whatever she could to prevent Mrs. Clinton from getting indicted, and the Senate Judiciary Committee is entitled to inquire into that. So is the Justice Department.
Thank you. Thank you ever so kindly. But wait, as I'm wont to say, there's more.
This is not under Bob Mueller. This is not involved with the Russians. The DOJ itself, Jeff Sessions, can assign a team of investigators, FBI agents and prosecutors, to investigate his predecessor as to whether or not she obstructed justice or behaved in a way that constitutes misconduct in office by preventing or doing everything she could to slow down or impede the investigation of Mrs. Clinton.
Judge, can you draw any other conclusion than that? I cannot. That was a directive made from Comey's boss, his ultimate boss, the Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, with regard, and she told him to calm it down, calmate. Is that collusion? Is that corruption? It's something in which Comey testified. And it brings up this question in terms of Comey's testimony. Is it possible, though Trump later recanted and said no, he didn't, but is it possible that James Comey, in his last testimony, actually admitted to these things regarding Loretta Lynch because he did fear that if he didn't tell at least a semblance of the truth, that it may come back and blow back on him if Donald Trump had, in fact, recorded the conversations between he and Comey in the Oval Office. That's another aspect that I think is very, very important with regard to this. Let's continue with Judge Knapp.
Wasn't it not only just what happened with Comey's testimony, but there's also assertions that she actually did tell other Democratic operatives that she would prevent this matter from going too far?
That's the reason for the question that Senator Grassley's people wrote to Attorney General Lynch about her communications with Debbie Wasserman Schultz, a congresswoman from Florida, and at the time, the chair of the Democratic National Committee. It is alleged, this document has not seen the light of day, if it exists, that there is one or several emails between Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Loretta Lynch concerning the behavior that Loretta Lynch will take to further the DNC interests while Mrs. Lynch was the Attorney General.
Emails between the chair of the DNC at the time and Loretta Lynch essentially colluding between the two to minimize and make sure that the Attorney General did not go after Hillary Rodham Clinton. What other conclusion could you draw from this?
That, if it happened, would be misconduct in office.
What's the punishment then?
Wait, this is delicious.
What's a felony, depending upon exactly what charge, what they charged her with, it could be 5 or 10 years in jail. It's very serious. It's the equivalent of obstruction of justice. It's the same allegations they're making about the president.
Incredible.
Incredible. I have another cut that I'd like to play, another audio cut. I've got about another 8 minutes, roughly 8 minutes. Occasionally, like a stopped clock, I come across things where leftists say logical, commonsensical kinds of things. Not with any kind of great frequency, mind you, of course. But once I saw this again on, where did I see this? Either Twitter or Facebook, I don't recall. But in any event, here's a conversation, and I wish you could see the video. If I had a way to put it up on YouTube, I would. But this is a conversation between Piers Morgan in the UK, and he's talking about the recent events in London, and he's speaking to Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London, and this is Piers Morgan, of all crazy things, tending to rip Sadiq Khan a new arsehole.
It seems to me utterly extraordinary that a bloke can appear on a jihadi TV show with an ISIS flag and no one does anything to stop him. This keeps happening. And I don't think it's really enough for the London mayor to just go, hey, we've never been safer, when actually a lot of people feel like we've never felt less safe.
You should see the look on Sadiq Khan's Gesicht, his face. He cannot fucking believe that Piers Morgan is fronting him off on television like this. I mean, these are two leftists. They're like this, that peas in a pod. Piers Morgan is offended. He's offended by the conduct or the non-conduct of the mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, a Muslim.
What they want to know is how do we get these people before they commit these atrocities? If you're a football hooligan and you whack a few people at a football match, you get a banning order. If you do it abroad, you get a control order, which means you can't travel. You know, and yet if you're a jihadi who wants to go to Syria and fight against British troops on some occasions, we just let you calmly come back in. Only one of them is currently under one of these control orders.
And in the video, again, this is glorious. Sadiq Khan is sitting there taking this crap. Again, the look on his face is like he cannot believe that he's sitting in the same room with Piers Morgan, a loving leftist in the UK, and he's throwing all this smegma on Sadiq Khan. And Sadiq Khan he's taking it because I think he's gobsmacked. I think he cannot believe that Piers Morgan is saying this to his face.
400 have come back out of the 850 who've gone to Iraq or Syria to fight. How do we know how many? I mean, obviously this is a UK problem. You are mayor of the capital city where the most recent terrorist attack has taken place. How many of those 400 have come back to London?
The estimate is just over half. So
just over half have come back to London. And they let them in. No problem. We like you. I'm Sadiq Khan. I'm a fellow Muzzy. I say, come back in. I greet you with loving arms. Please, you're one of my peeps.
Where are they?
When you look at the...
Where are they? Well, he doesn't know.
But seriously,
How
where
are
are
we
they?
letting people back in to the UK?
How are you letting people back into the UK? Not how are you, why are you letting people into the UK? Listen, if Sadiq Khan threw a camshaft and went over to 10 Downing and said, look, he's stamping his fist on the desk of Theresa May and say, we need to do something about this now, she would listen.
Who haven't just been trained, they've actually fought, potentially against our troops. How are we letting them back in without knowing exactly where they are and what they're up to? Because out of all the thousands of people...
And in the meantime, Sadiq Khan is kind of nodding his head a little bit. He's still in a state of shock.
...that we're concerned about. Surely those who've actually gone to fight are the biggest risk.
Well, that's one of the reasons why it doesn't make sense for the government to be cutting resources from those...
Where are they? You're the men.
He's talking about resources. He's not talking about what's actually going on. He's talking about resources for these poor jihadis.
Where of this capital city, where are they?
I can't follow 400 people. What I can do is make sure we have the policies, because we can...
But why can't you? Why can't Scotland Yard? They can make rules. They can make policies. They can make laws. They're not. Sadiq Khan, by dint of the power that he holds as the mayor of London and his proximity to 10 Downing Street, could be a pain in the arse of Theresa May with regard to this issue. He could choose to do so, but chooses not to do so.
What we can do, though, is make sure that the resources for the police and the experts to follow these people...
Why can't you instruct the police? Why can't you call Cressida Dick right now and say every one of those people who's come back from a war zone, who's in London, I want them followed?
Right. Why can't you? That's a logical question that demands an answer. And they're not getting answers. What they are getting is they're getting people killed. Folks, it's just about time for me to go. I want to say a couple of things just before I do go, and that's this. I'm going to have Dan Butcher on Thursday. You need to listen to Dan Butcher. I welcome him back into radio. It's going to be a great thing. Jeff Dunitz is coming as well. Tomorrow, I would tell you there's going to be a video that I'm going to place on the blog which shows UK police forces retreating from a crowd of Muslims. And this is what is considered acceptable in the UK these days. I want you to go to the bloviatingzeppelin.net tomorrow morning. Actually, I'm going to post it at midnight. And I want you to watch that video, because that, unfortunately, right now is the state of the art for policemen, policewomen, and GAUPs, leftists, in the United Kingdom. GAUPs, guilty, overeducated white persons. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, thank you ever so kindly for listening to the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon here on the SHR Media Network. If you want to contact me, I'm on Twitter at bzepp and on my blog, like I mentioned, at bloviatingzeppelin.net. My original intro music is by Possessed Tranquility, and if you want some other music from them as well, you can do it if you go to the site reverbnation.com. I love my intro music. Promotional consideration, of course, is by Lockheed Martin, Skunk Works, and the Boeing Company, because if it ain't Boeing, I ain't going, and my tiaras are by My Little Pony. Thanks to my personal KC-135 Kettle One refueling team, with whom I will be consulting in less than an hour. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening live and podcast in the chat room. God bless. Take care. Be safe. Come back tomorrow night for Sackheads. Come back Thursday night for the Aftermath here at the SHR Media Network.
Everybody quiet down now and get some sleep.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, Mama. Good night, Ben.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, Mama. Good night, Daddy.
Good night, children.
Good night, Daddy. Good night, Elizabeth.
Good night, John Boy. Good night, Jim Bob. Good night, Jim Bob.
Good night, Jim Bob.
What's going on? I was asleep. What's everybody doing?
Good night,
Jim Bob. Go to sleep.
Good night, and good luck.